Hello and a very, very warm welcome to Monza for the 7th round of the 2013 International GT Open. This, the second race of the weekend, the 14th of the season, and 50 minutes of drama await around the Cathedral of Speed here, just on the outskirts of Milan. And will we see the championship decided today, or will it go all the way to the final round of the season at Barcelona on the 9th and 10th of December? Well, certainly Andrea Montermini has got the whip hand coming into today's race. So a very, very warm welcome from myself, Ben Evans, to a damp and drizzly Monza as the pit lane opened moments ago. So have the heavens, and we have got a fine sprinkling of drizzle and some quite steady showers out on the far side of the circuit. Means that the large crowd that have flocked here to enjoy the International GT Open today having to find a little bit of shelter, and it's certainly going to spice up what was already going to be a very, very lively race for us to look forward to. So this, the shorter of the race of the weekend, 50 minutes ahead, and, well, if things work out as he hopes they will, then Andrea Montermini at the checker flag today will become the 2013 International GT Open champion. He needs an advantage of 44 points or more going into the final round at Barcelona. He's currently 56 points clear of his championship rivals, Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli. And there is Andrea on the grid. And as you can see, looking very, very pensive. He was all smiles this morning when I bumped into him in the paddock. But the last thing you want is for the rain to come down. The pit lane is open for a little bit longer than normal. It's a 10-minute opening, and it's giving the likes of Via Almeida here in his AF course, Ferrari 458, the opportunity just to do a couple of sighting laps around the circuit, find out where the grip is, and make the all-important choice as to whether to go to slick tyres or wets, because these are big, heavy GT cars, and if the rain stops early in the race, they will very, very quickly clear the precipitation away. Well, lining up on pole position is the AF course Ferrari of Matt Griffin, a multiple race winner already this year. Griffin in pursuit of his 4th victory of the season alongside Duncan Cameron. It is then the championship leading Vallorba course Ferrari that shares the front row. It's Davide Rigon who will be starting the race before handing over to Andrea Montermini through the mid-race pit stops. Thumbs up from Rigon, but very challenging conditions. The first of the GTS cars, which is for the GT3 spec cars, lines up third on the grid. That is Michele Rugolo, again in the AF course Ferrari, the former Superstars GT sprint racer, who has been in fine form this season, very impressive in qualifying yesterday. Fourth on the grid, we have Matteo Cressoni, who didn't get to race yesterday in the DriveX Porsche because he didn't join us. Carlos Vieira torpedoed Michael Lyons into the first chicane. Both cars heavily damaged. The mechanics for both DriveX and AF course have pulled an all-nighter, and therefore Cressoni lines up 4th on the grid. 5th on the grid it is Matteo Beretta and Michael Lyons. Beretta starts the race, and he didn't get to race either yesterday. As you can see, that drizzle falling and conference going on between Lyons and Beretta about the best course of action. 6th on the grid, the Ombra Racing Ferrari of Stefano Gattuso, which finished 3rd on the road yesterday, incurred a lap penalty for an early pit stop, so he and Stefano Constantini looking to continue their fine form of the weekend thus far through into this second race. 7th on the grid, yesterday's overall runner-up, Luis Razia and Chris van der Drift. It was a red-letter day for the Biotech Racing team, with Rafael Suzuki and Giorgio Pantano taking the win, Razia and van der Drift the runners-up. An awful lot of work to do for the car that lines up 8th on the grid. Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos in the V8 Racing Vodafone Corvette. They need to score at least 12 more points than Andrea Montermini in today's race to take the championship on to Barcelona in November, and even then it would be a long shot. Thumbs up from Ronnie Kessel to his driver Marco Frezza, 9th on the grid in the Kessel Racing Ferrari that he shares with Lorenzo Bontempelli. Bontempelli currently 2nd in the GTS Championship standings. Roman Mavlanov lines up in 3rd. Mavlanov, who finished in 10th, rather, finished in 4th in yesterday's race. Behind this car, Alexander Scarabin, who completed the podium for Esta Motorsport. He and Alessandro Pierguidi had a very strong race, and they will be hopeful of repeating that in these slightly more treacherous conditions today. Around the out row 6, the experienced Czech driver, Filip Salaquada, who always went well in these conditions in his single-seater career. Remember a fantastic podium he had in the World Series Barcelona a few years ago. So let's see how Philippe could pick his way up through the field. Rafael Suzuki, victorious yesterday. He's going to have to work pretty hard, though, to overcome 13th on the grid in the Bitech McLaren, particularly as the team's still not 100% comfortable with the wet setup for that car. However, the Mercedes SLS of Jan Seyfarth, the Seyfarth Motorsport run car, didn't have the pace in the dry yesterday, but I think they will be confident if the rain falls ever more steadily that they could pull off a little bit of a surprise result. 15th on the grid, Johnny Larsson in the Kessel Racing Ferrari, and Larsson was yesterday's GTS Gentleman Drivers Trophy winner, which is the trophy for drivers of a certain vintage who haven't previously won international championships. The Super GT Gentleman Drivers Trophy winner was Alexander Taukanitsa Sr. It's his son, Alexander Taukanitsa Jr., though, who starts today, the Austrian-based Belarusian driver, who was in very fine form throughout the second half of yesterday's race. So the race is going to be started under safety car conditions, and that's a very prudent decision from the stewards of the meeting, because the opening chicane here at Monza is notorious for it all getting a little bit lively in the dry, let alone in the damp, when the drivers won't have the chance to really warm up their big Dunlop tyres. So the race will get underway behind the safety car, but this is how they're going to line up, with front row Matt Griffin and Davide Rigon. Row 2, Michele Rugolo and Matteo Cressoni. The third row, Michael Lyons and Matteo Beretta starting the car, and Stefano Gattuso. Row 4, Luis Razia and Nicky Pastorelli. Completing the top 10 then, Marco Frezza and Roman Mavlanov. The sixth row of the grid, Alexander Skrabin and Philippe Salaquada. Row 7, Rafael Suzuki and Jan Seyfarth. Be interesting to see how that Mercedes moves up through the field. Johnny Larsson and Alexander Taukanitsa Jr. show row 8. And on to row 9, Maxime Soulet in the GPR Racing Aston Martin. Expect to see him fly up the order. Row 10, Danny Vertman and Rick Abrecht. And Corvette row 10. Row 11, Bert Longin and Dimitris Verikos. The Autolando Porsche should go well in these conditions, as will Peter Cox at the wheel of the Lippert Rhinos Lamborghini. Row 13, Antonio Coimbra and Mario Cordoni. Then Vimal Mehta and Stephen Earle on row 15. Completing the 30-car grid, Eduard Leganov and Kirill Ladygin. And we're getting word as well that the 74 car of Peter Cox is going to have to start from the back of the grid as well, as a belated tyre change for them. So frustration for the Lamborghini team as Montermini ducks for cover. The view from our commentary box here, which is overlooking the start and finish line, is suggesting that the rain is falling ever more steadily, and what was probably a toss of the coin, whether to go with slick or wet tyres, is now, I suspect, for those that are on slicks, going to be a pretty unenjoyable start to the race. There is Tiziana, the team manager at Kessel Racing, who it's great to see her back in the paddock this weekend. She was injured along with several members of the Kessel crew in a road crash at the Spa meeting, but Kessel team bouncing back this weekend and running a number of cars, very, very busy. Paddock Hospitality Unit as well, many of the team's supporters out in force. Well, if you're new to the International GT Open, to explain, there are two classes. There is the Super GT class, which is for, broadly speaking, GT2-based cars, and the GTS class, which is for, broadly speaking, GT3 cars. The race today is over 50 minutes. There is a mandatory pit stop that comes between 40 and 60% race distance, so that means between 20 and 30 minutes of the race duration, when they all must make their pit stop. All the cars run on a control compound Dunlop tyre, and whether or not they have elected to go with wets or slicks, we will find out very shortly, because the safety car is moving off from the grid. So the field get waved underway, and because it's a safety car starts the race, race clock has already begun ticking downwards. So the race has started. So it'll be a period behind the safety car, give the opportunity for the drivers to really get a sense of where the grip is around the circuit, and then hopefully before too long the race will go into green flag conditions. Well, given that this is, in terms of international GT racing, really a sprint race rather than the enduro, because with the two drivers they have to drive absolutely flat out for what will, broadly speaking, be their 25-minute stint. Therefore, it is very, very frustrating for the drivers to lose race time behind the safety car, in particular Matt Griffin, the pole sitter for the AF Corse Ferrari team. Very quick driver, multiple race winner in the British GT Championship. multiple class winner as well at international level. Already won 3 races this year, but he is a little bit quicker than his co-driver Duncan Cameron. And when Griffin and Cameron have had their success, it's partly been due to a very solid platform set by Matt Griffin early in the race. Waving to the camera from Lorenzo Bontempelli. Slightly tenser in the Vallorba course pits for Andrea Montermini, because this is one of those days when you come into the race with such a dominant championship lead like Montermini has got, that you just don't want anything to go wrong, or really anything to upset the status quo. And a shower imminent immediately before the race start is exactly what the team will not have wanted. So the tail of the field tiptoeing their way through the Curva Grande. And to talk to the teams after qualifying yesterday, which was held in not dissimilar damp conditions, they were saying that although the cars, particularly the GTS cars with their ABS brakes, have got quite a lot of inherent traction and mechanical grip, once you get any sort of precipitation, because the track winds its way through the trees, it takes a long, long time for a dry line to emerge, and therefore, certainly for the first half of this race, even if the race were to stop now, we can expect very greasy conditions. But looking out from the commentary box window towards the far side of the circuit, if anything, the rain is intensifying. It's not particularly big drops of rain, but it's very, very fine, misty rain as they head through Lesmos. And again, for Nicky Pastorelli in the Vodafone Corvette, this not what he would have wanted, because we've already had some 2.5 minutes of the race tick by, and he has had no opportunity, of course, with this safety car start to make any improvement up through the order. However, some of the others, this is probably exactly how they would wanted the start of the race to unfold, in particular in the GTS championship battle, because we've got the overall championship we've brought you up to date with. There's also the GTS championship battle, and that is now led by Giorgio Pantano and Rafael Suzuki. They are on 48 points. Lorenzo Bontempelli is second, 6 points adrift on 42, with then Miguel Toril, who is Jan Seyfarth's co-driver in the Seyfarth Mercedes. He is just 3 points back on 39. And then Matteo Beretta and Michael Lyons are fifth on the grid. Well, they are 11 points off the lead on 37 points. So it really is everything to race for in that GTS class, and particularly Beretta and Lyons. This is how they would like the race to get underway. When the pit stops do happen, all the teams must have a minimum of a 70-second pit stop. However, the way that performance is balanced out in the International GT Open isn't through success ballast like some other categories, but it's through an additional pit stop handicap time. And coming into today's race, the pertinent handicaps to watch for amongst the Super GT runners, Andrea Montermini and Davide Rigon, they have an additional 45 seconds on top of that 70-second pit stop time, as do Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli. Crucially, the pole-sitting car of Matt Griffin has no additional pit stop handicap time. We are going to go for another lap here behind the safety car as the track steadily dampens as they head down the start and finish straight. And this has been also a fairly steady lap behind the safety car, some 4 minutes or so. I'm sure the drivers will be itching to get underway. In the GTS class, the handicaps are a little bit less significant. Unsurprisingly, yesterday's winners, Giorgio Pantano and Rafael Suzuki, have an additional 15 seconds. And their teammates, Razia and Chris Vanderdrift, 10 seconds. The GPR Aston Martin of Enzo Ide and Maxime Soulet, based on some exemplary results earlier in the season, also have 15 seconds. And then Alessandro Pierre Guidi and Sander Scrabin have 5 seconds added to their pit stop time by dint of their third place in the GTS class in yesterday's race. And that really leaves the field wide open, and you'd have to say that it swings in favour of the AF Course Ferraris of Michele Rugolo and Matteo Beretta. Also, I think well worth watching the Kessel Ferrari of Marco Frezza and Lorenzo Bontempelli. They line up ninth on the grid, and let's not forget at Spa a few weeks ago it was Frezza and Bontempelli who took a remarkable outright race victory in not dissimilar conditions to this, where the track was wet, but it wasn't streamingly wet, and it really did favour the characteristics of the Ferrari 458, because the beauty of the International GT Open is that it is multi-part GT racing, and all these different cars, be it the Ferrari, the Porsche, the Lamborghini, the McLaren, they've all got very different characteristics. And to talk to the drivers, they say that in the wet, the Ferrari 458 is an absolute dream to drive. It's a very balanced car. The weight is nicely, evenly distributed around the car, and it gives the driver a lot of confidence when turning into the corners. In contrast, the Chevrolet Corvette, it's a mobile earthquake in a straight line. But in the wet weather, as we saw at Paul Ricard at the start of the season, it's not the work of the moment to get the big, heavy Corvette around the turns. And therefore, maybe it's slightly less enjoyable proposition in the wet weather. The wild car to watch for here is the DriveX Porsche of Matteo Crosoni and Carlos Vieira. It lines up fourth on the grid. Yesterday, Vieira was flying through the field before he was a little bit over-ambitious into the first chicane. Missed his braking point, didn't miss Michael Lyons, and it was immediate retirement. Both cars picking up a lot of damage, and everybody was pleasantly surprised to see them both lining up today. However, the DriveX Porsche team have had an interrupted season because just as their other driver pairing, Nicolo Sciarra and Archie Hamilton, were coming into form at Jerez back in June, the car was burnt out in a horrific fire just as the car was on course for its maiden podium of the season. But the setup tweaks that the squad had learned from the Manthey Racing Porsche team have been transferred onto the car of Crosoni and Vieira, and it's looked very competitive this weekend. How competitive in these damp conditions, we're going to find out very, very soon, because the safety car is going to be coming in at the end of this second lap of the race, and we're going to have something like 42 minutes left on the race clock when we do get underway. So it's only going to be 12 minutes of action before the pit window opens. It is going to be fast and frantic here in the 14th race of the 2013 International GT Open, as Matt Griffin backs the pack up through the legendary Parabolica corner before he will get to press the loud pedal and accelerate down the start and finish straight as the race about to go into green flag conditions, and we wait for Matt Griffin to pull the pin and get the race properly underway. The pace car peels in now. The overhead gantry on the start finish line goes green, and we go racing in anger here at Monza for the second time this weekend as Griffin sprints down the start and finish straight on towards the chicane with Davide Rigon following in his wheel tracks. Then it's Michele Rugolo further back already, looking to try and make a little bit of progress is Jan Seyfarth. Likewise, Matteo Beretta is going to make the move up into fourth position. So it is AF Corse Ferrari first, Villorba Corse Ferrari second, then the two GTS AF Corse Ferraris running third and fourth, Michele Rugolo and Matteo Beretta. The rest of the field, pleased to report, cleanly through the chicane, as already Davide Rigon was looking to line up a little bit of a move on Matt Griffin as they went through Curva Grande. We'll see when they arrive into the second chicane whether that's paid off, as Rigon looks the inside of Griffin, then have to balance on the brakes, and Griffin out breaks himself and runs wide, and that should give Davide Rigon the lead of the race in the Villorba Corse Ferrari. As yes, Griffin has to rejoin in third position, but immediately Rigon coming under pressure from Michele Rugolo, who challenges around the outside into the first Lesmo. Oh, that's a brilliant move from Michele Rugolo. You very, very rarely see that done here at Monza, around the outside into Lesmo number one. Now, will Rugolo be able to keep it on the island through the second Lesmo? He does just that as they sprint now towards Ascari. And that shows the level of traction in these GTS Ferraris, the Super GT Ferrari, Davide Rigon, and the similar car of Matt Griffin. They don't have ABS braking. They've got to be a little bit more delicate with the right foot under acceleration, and that is why Michele Rugolo has been able to jump into that immediate advantage as they tiptoe their way through the Ascari. Really first time at full racing speed before sprinting on towards the Parabolica. Also making good progress on this first lap is Stefano Gattuso. He, in the red and blue Ombre Racing Ferrari, moves up into fifth position ahead of Matteo Crosoni, and also going very, very strongly there. You can see in seventh place is Nicky Pastorelli, who goes side by side with Roman Mavlanov into the Parabolica. Mavlanov in the Russia Bears Ferrari trying to keep his footing around the outside, and does just that. The pair of them tiptoe on the limit of adhesion before they sprint through to complete the third lap of the race, and you suspect that former Champ Car racer, former European Formula 3000 champion Nicky Pastorelli will probably have the edge here in the Corvette, but it's going to be very, very tight as the leaders hit the brakes into the chicane. Do they all hit their braking point? Yes, they do. Does Nicky Pastorelli gain that place on Roman Mavlanov? He does. Oh, and he makes contact with Matteo Crosoni and turns Crosoni sideways. Fortunately, the DriveX Porsche, I don't think it's picked up too much damage, but there was some smoke pouring forth there, and we'll see whether or not Crosoni is able to continue. So frustration for Nicky Pastorelli. Now, is that mechanical smoke, or is that just bodywork rubbing against the tyre for Matteo Crosoni? Irrespectively, unfortunately, it's going to see him plummeting down the order. It's Davide Rigon. Now he's getting some heat into those Dunlop tyres. He's coming back at Michele Rugolo, and he's bringing, or trying to, Matt Griffin with him for company. So into the first Lesmo once more. The leading trio breaking clear. Pastorelli rejoins. He's lost a place now to Marco Frezza as well. And this is what can happen when you're challenging for a championship. You just have to take more risks than you normally would. It's very, very rare to see Pastorelli getting involved in an incident of that sort. It shows just how little grip there is as well under braking, as now Stefano Gattuso looks to challenge Matteo Beretta, as Davide Rigon is having a look to the inside of Rugolo for the lead. Beretta is under fire here, but he's able just to withstand the pressure from Gattuso on the way into Ascari. He then runs out a little bit wide over the curbs, and that should allow Gattuso through. Indeed he does. So the former GTS champion from the 2011 season, Stefano Gattuso, moves clear of Matteo Beretta. Further back, oh dear, more dramas. Contact between Peter Cox, who tips Antonio Coimbra into the spin. You can see as well how many of them were missing the breaking point into the chicane. Good evasive action as well coming from the American driver Steve Earle. So here, another look at the Cressoni-Pastorelli incident. Pastorelli ever so slightly misjudged his breaking point, as did Matteo Beretta into Ascari, and that gave Gattuso the opportunity to gain the place. 4 laps completed. It is Michele Rugolo in the red with the Italian flag livery. AF Course Ferrari leads the way from the Villorba Course Ferrari, the predominantly white car of Davide Rigon. Then Matt Griffin in the second of the AF Course Ferraris. The fight for fourth, though, this is it. It's headed up by Stefano Gattuso in the Ombra Ferrari. He has got the Russian Bears Ferrari of former Renault Eurocup racer Roman Mavlanov right on his tail. And then we've got Matteo Beretta next along. Mavlanov was briefly at least ahead of Beretta. Now, did it all go wrong? No, it didn't. He retains the place over Matteo Beretta, as Michele Rugolo now really having his work cut out to keep the feisty Davide Rigon behind him, and Rigon taking every opportunity to show himself in Rugolo's mirrors. Otherwise, Roman Mavlanov doing much the same. Stefano Gattuso, Nicky Pastorelli getting the Corvette back up to speed. He's already passed Marco Fretzer. He's looking to do much the same to Matteo Beretta into the second Lesmo. Has Pastorelli gone through? Yes, he has. At the back of your shot, you can see the black Corvette, the Vodafone car, through ahead of Matteo Beretta. It's Davide Rigon. It's hard to see from this angle whether he's making a legitimate challenge for the lead. He does just that. Through he goes. Takes the lead away from Michele Rugolo into Ascari. And that was a fantastic move on the brakes from Davide Rigon, because he doesn't have the benefit of ABS braking, and that means that he needs a very educated right foot to get that car slowed down in the way that he did. And now that Rugolo has been demoted, he's immediately into the clutches of Matt Griffin. And again, Griffin just showing himself in Rugolo's mirrors, letting him know that he's there. You can see, though, how the rain is coming down. There really is a gloom and a murk around this Monza circuit. And it's Matteo Beretta who's probably struggling the most amongst the front runners at the moment. Further back down the field, a drama, and around we go for Danny Wertmann into the wall in the Corvette. That won't prompt a safety car. Another look at the past lead of the race. Thumbs up from the Villorba Course team. It's a full garage for them this week. They've got lots of sponsors here supporting them, as Marco Fretzer and Philippe Salaquada get very, very tight into the chicane. They're all in pursuit of Matteo Beretta. They've also got Jan Seyfarth for company with them in the Mercedes SLS, and that's a particularly significant battle because the second and third cars in that queue, Marco Fretzer and Jan Seyfarth, their co-drivers are very much in the hunt for the overall GTS championship. And that, I'm sure, is something that will be affirmed on the radio as Seyfarth looks to make the move on Marco Fretzer, who's rather boxed in there behind Philippe Salaquada. So Seyfarth gains the position, and that is sufficient for 9th place. Though Marco Fretzer looking to fight back, and he's squeezed on the grass by Jan Seyfarth. Very, very robust driving from the German. Fretzer, though, keeps his right foot squarely in, and he needs to, because he's got the Russian driver Alexander Skrabin right on his tail as well. So will Jan Seyfarth be able to pull clear of Marco Fretzer here, or is Fretzer going to look to fight back, as Skrabin also was trying to pick his way past the Kessel Ferrari? In the meantime, a change for second place. Matt Griffin through past Michele Rugolo, the two AF Course teammates swapping places. I'm not sure that Rugolo made it quite as difficult for Matt Griffin as it did for Davide Rigon. A lap ago as Roman Mavlanov runs out over the grass. Let's have another look at this from Jan Seyfarth. Fretzer looks to dive to the inside, and Seyfarth eases him towards the grass. This is the fight for fourth. It's headed by Stefano Gattuso. He has got Romain Mavlanov behind him. Then Nicky Pastorelli in the Corvette. Then the gap back to Matteo Beretta, Philippe Salaquada, Jan Seyfarth, then Alexander Skrabin, who did find a way past Marco Fretzer. And this is frantic stuff with very good reason, because we've only got 34 minutes or so left on the clock as Davide Rigon leads Matt Griffin into the chicane at the start of lap 7 of the race. And don't forget that because of the success handicaps, that Valour course Ferrari of Rigon have to spend an additional 45 seconds in the pits in comparison to the AF course Ferrari of Matt Griffin. The fight for 7th place exits the chicane. Marco Fretzer looking to get himself back up to pace through the chicane. Escape road has gone. Maxime Soulé in the GPR Aston Martin. He may have helped himself to a couple of places as well as a result of that. Where is the challenge going to come from? Into the chicane this time. We follow the Gattuso, Mavlanov and Pastorelli battle, but it looked at the back of the shot as possibly as if Salaquada was lining up for a move. Indeed, he does just that as Beretta runs across the chicane. They sprint towards the first Lesmo, and really Beretta should give the place to Philippe Salaquada. He does just that, and he's now, Beretta this is, vulnerable to a challenge, both from Jan Seyfarth, but also Alexander Skrabin as well. This is all going to get very, very tight by the time they arrive into Ascari, as Beretta doesn't make friends with the apex at the second Lesmo. He carries a lot less speed out as Skrabin pulls out of the slipstream nice and early. There is a Mercedes hidden in there as well, as Skrabin then gets back in line. And this is the moment where we saw Matteo Beretta really triggering that, but he holds on to the place into Ascari. Jan Seyfarth, who somehow has got Alexander Skrabin still behind him, and then Marco Fretzer joined the queue, and you can see that Matteo Beretta, not surprisingly, hasn't got that car entirely to his liking, because the mechanics were up all night in the AF Course garage rebuilding the car after the accident yesterday. Matteo Beretta then to the inside of the road. It's Seyfarth to the middle. Oh, that gets very tight as Skrabin looks to the outside. It's Jan Seyfarth gets boxed in behind Matteo Beretta. It's a Christmas present come early for Alexander Skrabin. He gains 2 places in one move. The former Ferrari Trofeo Europe racer, as he now takes the opportunity to pound down in 8th position down the start and finish straight. But Jan Seyfarth immediately, Mercedes SLS, looks to draw alongside. In the battle for 4th, Nicky Pastorelli looking to try and do much the same thing to Romain Mavlanov. They're all still behind Stefano Gattuso, but they are catching Michele Rugolo. The rate of knots, oh, very, very tight through the chicane. Again, it's Marco Fretzer who gains the place. Matteo Beretta on this occasion. Then Jan Seyfarth is through past Alexander Skrabin. And again, Seyfarth is being quite robust here. He pushes Skrabin onto the grass as well as they head through Curva Grande. No change still in the fight for 4th, which is very rapidly going to become the fight for 3rd position. So Seyfarth jumps on the brakes and is going to straight line the chicane here, and he really should give the place to Skrabin possibly. Now that is interesting. Philippe Salaquada, the first car in the queue there, you saw him moving offline to find the wet track, which suggests it might be drying out. As Stephen Earle makes contact with Alexander Taukanitsa Jr. Taukanitsa Jr. spun around. Earle picks up the damage on the Kessel Racing Ferrari. And all the while, as we reach the 20-minute mark in this race, it is Davide Rigon who leads. 2nd place, Matt Griffin. 3rd place, Michele Rugolo. 4th, Stefano Gattuso. 5th, just, is Romain Mavlanov. But he's now got Nicky Pastorelli asking all the right questions at all the right times in the big Corvette. Now, can Pastorelli get the run that he needs coming out of Ascari along the back straight towards the parabolic? You can see that Davide Rigon's not really sprinting clear here. A flash of the lights from Pastorelli. Yeah, I think he's probably got more chance winning the lottery this weekend than he does of Mavlanov letting him through. So that is a move that doesn't happen as we hit the 20-minute mark in the race. It means that for the next 10 minutes, the driver change window is open, and a race that has already been very, very dramatic is about to be further turned on its head. Be very surprised though we see anybody coming in on this lap, at least amongst the front runners, but some of those further down the pack might take the opportunity. Stuck into the pits as Rigon, his advantage over Matt Griffin, just 1.8 seconds as Rugolo has been caught now by Gattuso. Mavlanov outbrakes himself with the opening chicane, has a clatter across the curbs and rejoins. Srazia in the Vitek McLaren. He's got Maxime Soulé just behind him. They are busy doing battle over 12th and 13th position. They've got Johnny Larsson, the Danish driver, as well, closing in onto their tail. And they're about to reel in Matteo Beretta, who has slipped down to 11th position now. He's going to leave Michael Lance a lot of work to do in the second half of the race. Marco Fretzer on the limit of adhesion. He does very well to get that car turned into the chicane. He's also, out of our sight, picked his way past Alexander Scarabin. Right, first driver change underway. And it is Marco Sciocci who will take over from Vimal Mehta. And Sciocci was in feisty form yesterday. It'll be interesting how that car comes up through the orders. A big twitch from Rugolo coming out of the second Lesmo, and that is the opening surely for Stefano Gattuso to move into third position. He's side by side with Rugolo as they come over the brow of the hill into the braking zone for Ascari, but crucially for Gattuso, he's got the inside line, and he might be followed through here by Roman Mavlanov, who sees a gap that rapidly closes. As Rugolo turns across, jinks through Ascari, but he has slipped to fourth position then, Michele Rugolo, the early race leader. Down the back straight though, will there be another change? As Gattuso is now punching the hole through the air. He's got Rugolo looking to take advantage of the slipstream. Also, the Russian driver, Roman Mavlanov, as well, in very close pursuit. Three of them wind their way through the Parabolica. And Rugolo, being a little bit premature with the throttle there, just slipping the car sideways. And that is going to be the opportunity for Roman Mavlanov to look to draw alongside. As into the pit lane, we have got Davide Rigon. So the erstwhile race leader, Davide Rigon, has come into the pits. We filling out what is the battle for second, third and fourth, as Mavlanov to the inside of Rugolo is going to make that stick into the chicane. And that was all the result. Slight error from Rugolo through the Parabolica. So Andrea Montermini, if he can win the championship today, it's very much in his own hands, because he is going to be driver for the remaining 27 minutes or so of this race. Matteo Beretta has been caught by Luis Razzia and Maxime Soule. They've also got Marco Sciocci a lap down after his pit stop as part of that squabble as well. Sciocci busy fending off the efforts of Johnny Larsson. Matt Griffin leading the race and really getting into a little bit of traffic. He's only some 3.5 seconds clear of Gattuso as Pastorelli thinks about challenging Rugolo into first Lesmo. Rugolo flicks it sideways, and that should give Pastorelli the inside line, the opportunity to go through second Lesmo. Rugolo doesn't want to give it to him, but fortunately for him, he's got no option. Pastorelli gains the place and moves up into fourth as a result. Pastorelli, I suspect we will see going very deep into this pit window, as will the race leader Matt Griffin, before he has to hand over to Duncan Cameron. How quickly can Pastorelli go on to terms with the fight for second between Gattuso and Roman Mavlanov? In particular, Mavlanov has been really the revelation of the season, the young Russian driver. He was in Formula Renault Euro Cup last year and didn't do an awful lot other than fund Renault's spare parts department, to be honest, but he's made the transition very, very easily to GT racing, and ever since the first round of the year at Paul Ricard, he really has got to grips with the SMP Russian Bears Ferrari and has gone supremely well. And again, through the Parabolic, he's just that bit smoother than Gattuso, who, like Rugolo the lap before, just went a little bit sideways, taking the more traditional racing line. It gives Mavlanov the opportunity to follow in the slipstream behind Stefano Gattuso down the start and finish straight, just a tenth of a second between them as they went over the timing beam, and they're going to catch Montermini, who emerges from the pit stop right in the midst of this battle. And Montermini, this is the worst moment for him to rejoin the action, and he very wisely stays out of the way. He's edged towards the periphery of the circuit by the enthusiastic Mavlanov, who in turn is going to be passed by Nicky Pastorelli. As Mavlanov was slowed, Pastorelli pounced and moves up into third position in a race of ever-changing fortunes. Matteo Beretta decides it's a good moment to duck into the pits. He hands over to Michael Lyons, and the fight for second continues in its intensity. As Mavlanov would feel that he's probably got the pace to repass Pastorelli. I think Pastorelli would think that too, because of the way he covered the inside line then, the way into the first Lesmo. Driver change as well for the Tau Kanitzers. Frustrating race for them thus far after that spin. And we've got a problem for yesterday's race winner, Raphael Suzuki. It's a front right puncture, or rather Luis Razzia, a front right puncture on the Biotech McLaren. And so yesterday's runner-up out of the race. So we are just over half race distances. Matt Griffin, who leads the way. Second place, Stefano Gattuso. Third place, Nicky Pastorelli. Fourth, It's Roman Mavlanov. In 5th place, we've got Michele Rugolo. Then it's Philippe Salquada, and then Jan Seyfarth. Andrea Montermini, after his very early pit stop, has come out right in the middle of this battle for 2nd position. He's going to have his eyes on stalks. But Montermini, former Formula 1 racer, former IndyCar racer, vastly experienced, multiple race winner into these GT cars, will know exactly how to handle these conditions and exactly how to handle the traffic around him, because really he's not racing these cars, he's just needing to make sure that he stays in touch with Nicky Pastorelli in the Chevrolet Corvette, because that would be sufficient to give him the championship today. Even so, Montermini looks to be able to power past Michele Rugolo down into the chicane. He does just that as Pastorelli outbrakes himself and straight lines the chicane and shows just how treacherous these conditions are. Jan Seyfarth from the SLS Mercedes gets onto terms with Philippe Salquada. That's a change of place. In fact, Salquada passing Seyfarth. We've seen that Seyfarth can drive a wide car already this race. Looks to challenge Salquada around the outside through Curva Grande. He does just that as they then sprint towards the 2nd of the chicanes. Peter Cox pulls into the pit lane. The German teenager Fabian Hamprecht, who came to within 5 kilometres of winning last time out at Spa before being passed by Montermini on the final lap, takes over. And Seyfarth continues to demonstrate that the width of Mercedes SLS is broadly equivalent to that of the Monza circuit, and is able to have repassed Salquada and keep the of course, Ferrari, the Czech driver, behind him. Got all the protagonists in the race and the championship really running in this continuous train as we're coming towards the conclusion of the 12th lap of the race, and I would expect that most of these cars will pit in at the end of this lap, because there's going to be slightly less than a lap time before the pit window closes, with 20 minutes remaining. And given that most of these cars don't have a pit stop handicap to worry about, it's going to be very, very exciting, because they should all go into the pits together and all rejoin the action together. The exception to that will be Nicky Pastorelli, because he, like Montermini, has got that additional 45 seconds to spend in the pits. Nonetheless, it's been a spirited drive from Pastorelli, and you can see why he is established as really one of the very, very best GT drivers in the world. So into the pit lane they all duck, and it's Matt Griffin who leads that queue. He will hand over to Duncan Cameron, and it means that Andrea Montermini is now in splendid isolation, which is exactly how he'd like it to be, really, for the next 21.5 minutes. As he looks to claim the 2013 International GT Open title. So in the background of the shot, you can see the Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin driver change. In the foreground, you can see, first of all, Michele Rugolo out to hand over to Claudio Tadanovic, immediately parking in behind him. It is Philippe Salquada who will hand over to former single-seater racer Fabio Anidi. So Duncan Cameron getting some last-minute instructions from Matt Griffin. Griffin shuts the door as Montermini runs across the curbs at the 2nd chicane. You can see how hard Montermini is pushing here, because he wants to claim the championship with a bang, and really that, for him, would mean getting himself onto the overall race podium. Enzo Ide takes over in the GPR Racing Aston Martin from Maxime Soulet. Actually, for them, they're some way down pack and really just haven't been in contention this weekend. They've had some various technical issues that have been of a concern for them. Well, all the cars that have served their pit stops are rejoining the race now in front of our commentary box. Andrea Montermini is working through Ascari, so that gives you an indication, really, of his exam question as he's looking to score victory in this race. He's going to have probably the best part of 35 seconds to make up in 20 minutes or so. So out of the pits, the driver who would appear to be leading the way is Paul Rosell. Duncan Cameron has, or rather it's Stefano Constantini who's ahead of the queue. So I suspect by the time it's all shaken itself out, it's going to be Constantini who will lead the way in the Ombra Racing Ferrari. He has got the Spaniard Paul Rosell in the S&P Russian Bears Ferrari chasing him down, and then in 3rd place and leading the Super GT class, it's Duncan Cameron. And this for Constantini, a golden opportunity possibly to score victory. He's previously raced with great success in Seat, but looking really to add some big GT results to his CV. This is the fight for third position then. Duncan Cameron just ahead of Miguel Toril, and with an eye towards the GTS Championship, this could be very significant, because Toril, of the drivers in contention for the GTS Championship, is really the only one who is in an elevated points position at the moment, and that will not give him the lead of the GTS standings if things finish as they are, but it would certainly bring him an awful lot closer to Giorgio Pantano and Rafael Suzuki. And so may well see him jump over Lorenzo Bontempelli, depending on what the diminutive Italian can do. And now Toril looking to challenge Duncan Cameron, this for third place in the race, and around the outside line into the Parabolica, swooping through goes Miguel Toril. It drops Duncan Cameron down to what I think will effectively be fourth position, as across the line and leading the way is Stefano Constantini. 4 seconds back is Paul Rosell. Alessandro Pierguidi will complete this lap clear of Claudio Sadanovic as a result of that move. So here is the race leader. Stefano Constantini's advantage over Paul Rosell is 4 seconds. Miguel Toril in third is a further 4 seconds back. In fourth place, we've got Duncan Cameron. Fifth is Lorenzo Bontempelli. And in sixth is Fabio Manidi. Still waiting for Andrea Montermini to flash across the line. Then we'll find out just where Montermini is and how far adrift the leader is going to be. I suspect it's almost impossible task here for Montermini to get onto the overall roster, as Bontempelli looks to make the move on Duncan Cameron for fourth position. Squirrely on the brakes, just flicking sideways, but Bontempelli goes through ahead of the British driver Duncan Cameron, and that puts Bontempelli fourth in the race. And also the GTS Championship is only now a single place behind Miguel Toril and Alessandro Pierguidi, gaining the position over Alessandro Fabio Onidi as well. So that is sixth position for Pierguidi. Onidi slipping down into seventh. With the two cars in contention for the overall championship, were it to be decided today, Miguel Ramos went across the line in 20th place, Andrea Montermini in 21st, best part of 50 seconds back from this battle for the lead of the race. And that means that if things stay as they are, Montermini will claim the championship, because Ramos just won't be in a position to get a sufficient number of points, regardless of where Montermini were to finish. But we could now have a real chase on Heatherfield. Here's another look at the move from Bontempelli, braking as late as he dares. The Ferrari threatening to, but not quite breaking traction. Duncan Cameron having no option but to take to the escape road. Marco Seifrid in the Rinaldi Porsche being caught here by Miguel Ramos and Andrea Montermini. So the two cars fighting out for the championship, not used to fighting out for 20th position, you'd have to say, but they've got quite a few cars potentially within range up ahead of them, as we see an attempted manoeuvre, and Enzo Ide looking to move into 14th place ahead of Michael Brosnitsky. He just that. So Brosnitsky and Ide, both race winners previously International GT Open. Ide in the GTS Aston Martin finding the traction, moves clear of the Kessel Racing Ferrari as we head into the last 15 minutes or so of this 14th race of the season. And it's the race that, as things stand, looking very likely to decide the outcome of the 2013 championship as well. It is Stefano Constantini who leads the way, and he is pulling clear of Paul Rosell, but both of them are being caught very rapidly by Miguel Toril and Lorenzo Bontempelli in third and fourth position. So we're following at the moment the battle for 15th position. Here is the race leader, Stefano Constantini, in the On Racing Ferrari. Well, they've had the pace all weekend. As we were saying earlier, they were third on the road in yesterday's race, but for an early pit stop on the part of Constantini, they would certainly have got themselves onto the rostrum. No such dramas today in terms of any pit stop indiscretions. Lost around, so he pulled 2/10 away from Paul Rosell. There is Rosell in second position in the SMP Ferrari. Then we've got Miguel Toril in Seyfarth Mercedes and the red Kessel Ferrari of Lorenzo Bontempelli. Just behind them as well, Alessandro Pierguidi in the Ester Racing Ferrari. Fabio Onidi as well, trying to find a way past Duncan Cameron. He can't quite do it into the Parabolica. So over the line, 15 laps have been completed already by Constantini. Look, Fabian Hamprecht outbraking himself into the chicane, and that's going to give Giorgio Pantano the place in the Biotech McLaren. Zanidi looks to challenge Cameron, the pair of them sprinting down the start and finish straight, and the track just begins to dry out as well. You can see the drivers moving offline where they can to try and cool down rubber in the beginnings of a dry line as well, just making itself clear through the opening chicane, and that is going to be a factor as well to watch in the remainder of the race, because you could see some cars, particularly those who've got over vigorously used wet tyres, just really having the grip falling away from them in the latter stages. It's Cameron still busy defending from an Edie who bobs and weaves from side to side, but now draws alongside into the chicane. Nothing Duncan Cameron could do about that, and up into 6th position then for Fabio Anidi. Guidi now released to try and chase down Alessandro Pierguidi. Guidi alongside Miguel Toril, the fastest man on the circuit. They're both lapping in the 2-minute 0.1s, whereas the race leader, Stefano Constantini, is lapping in the 2-minute 1s, and therefore Miguel Toril, provided he could put his way ahead of the Sport and U, Mercedes SLS of Luis Silva fairly rapidly, could bring himself into contention here for his 2nd victory of the season. Of course, he won at Jerez in very, very different conditions back in June. He may have been a little bit slow through the traffic on that occasion. Not so much, though, by looking at the 2nd sector split. So around the Parabolica heads Miguel Toril. He's got 12 minutes left on the race clock, so it's going to be most likely 6 more laps, or possibly 5 laps, depending on the pace maintained by Constantini. So across the line goes Rosell, with Toril then following behind, and that slower lap, of course, Miguel Toril, because of the traffic. But Alessandro Pierguidi in 5th position, the driver who's flying, and Pierguidi was 1.5 seconds quicker than the race leader, Stefano Constantini, last time round. So we've got all of the top 5 closing up upon each other at the moment. They're separated by 13 seconds. It's quite a bit of ground to make up, but within that the deficits are not that large. In particular, it will be very interesting just how far up the order Pierguidi can elevate himself, because it's he and Miguel Toril are really the 2 drivers who are absolutely flying. Lorenzo Bontempelli is also fractionally quicker than the race leader Constantini on most laps, but again he goes offline, really trying to cool down his wet tyres as Fabian Hamprecht. It's about trying to find... Oh, and he makes contact with Claudio Stanvic into the Parabolica. He's trying to find a way around him, just misjudged the braking point, and out to the race goes Stanvic, the AF Corse, which was the early race leader. Unfortunately, going no further. And will that bring out the 2nd safety car of the race, I wonder, because Stanvic isn't really that deeply buried in the beach. Let's have another look at it. Hamprecht misses the braking point by millimetres, the ghost of an impact, and around goes Stanvic. Hamprecht continues through the gravel trap in the Lamborghini. And Stefano Constantini about to arrive upon the scene of the crime into the Parabolica. Tiptoes his way through. And he's about to complete the 17th lap of the race. And this has been a very good lap from Stefano Constantini. It's been the car's best lap of the race thus far, which suggests that really the track is drying out quite rapidly as well. Across the line he goes. Yes, it's down to a 1 minute 59.5. And so as the rain stops, the track dries fractionally. Paul Rosell can't go with Constantini's pace. Miguel Toril can. And Alessandro Pierguidi most certainly can. Another 1.5 seconds gained from Pierguidi. So the leading quintet now separated by 13 seconds. But the good news for the Ombra Racing squad, actually on the pit wall, is that Stefano Constantini is currently the 2nd fastest car amongst that leading group. And we have not got much by way of progress from Miguel Ramos and Andrea Montermini. It's no particular surprise, certainly for Montermini. He knows where Ramos is. He knows he just needs to keep doing what he's doing, shadowing Ramos, and that will be enough to give him the championship. It's happening out on the other side of the circuit as Looking through the Lesmo section of the track is the car of race leader Stefano Constantini. Good battle brewing up now between Cesar Ramos, who's on the tail of Dietrich Schütthoff. This is the fight for 9th and 10th position. Schütthoff, who was an early retirement yesterday in the Corvette, ahead of the Brazilian driver, another former single-seater racer who's made the transition very successfully to GT racing, Cesar Ramos. We don't see him in the International GT Open as much as we would like, but when we do, he is in fine form, and they are in pursuit as well of Michael Lyons. And there, of course, Ferrari. Michael Lyons, somewhat uniquely in the field, goes and wins Formula 1 races in his spare time because he's got something of a parallel career. Not only is he a very impressive top-line GT racer, but he's also really one of the most in-demand historic racers that you'll find, and he travels globally racing in historic Formula 1 cars, historic Formula 5000 cars, and more often than not is victorious. They're about to put a lap on the Sport, rather yes, they are about to put a lap on Louis Silva in the Sport and U. Mercedes Silva gives Lyons plenty of space. Hopefully he'll leave that space open for Dietrich Schütthoff and Cesar Ramos to follow through, as well as Ramos draws alongside Schütthoff, who gets boxed in behind Louis Silva. And, oh, that's very, very tight. And maybe a little bit of contact there between Cesar Ramos and Dietrich Schütthoff, but it is the Kessel Racing Ferrari of Ramos who moves clear of the Dutchman and up into 9th position as all the cars run offline, trying to cool down their wet tyres, because what happens when the wet tyres overheat is that the blocks that have been cut into them to give the tread start to move around all over the tyre. It makes it a thoroughly unenjoyable driving experience, as Montermini has found a way past Miguel Ramos. So Andrea Montermini goes elbow to elbow with Miguel Ramos into the chicane. Ramos knows he's got to finish ahead of Montermini to stand any chance of taking the championship fight to Barcelona, and he moves back ahead of the Italian in the Villorba course Ferrari. For how long remains to be seen. He's all over the road, so is Montermini, ducking and weaving to one side then the other, trying to pick his way past the Corvette as they sprint through Curva Grande. We've got waved yellow flags coming in to the second of the chicanes, and that means Montermini can't challenge to find his way through, and that's why there's some debris that's been deposited on the road. From whom that was, we will see shortly. As Montermini immediately gets straight back on the offensive, forcing Ramos to take the very tight inside line into the first Lesmo. Montermini goes to the outside, skirts with disaster on the grass and kicks up some blades of grass. He may lose the place here to Fabian Hamprecht. Doesn't quite, but it shows that Montermini is a true racer. He wants to win the title in style, and that means finishing ahead of his principal rival. And there's more debris going towards Ascari. It looks like a tyre has completely exploded itself. We'll have another look at this from Andrea Montermini, braking as late as he possibly dared, trying to find a way past Miguel Ramos, and the pair of them thoroughly enjoying this very, very aggressive battle. I think that was the moment a lap ago when Montermini found his way past Ramos. This was Ramos repaying the compliment. The pair of them, very experienced racers, and you can see why, avoiding contact. And then Montermini trying to repeat the trick, millimetres wide through the grass. Nervous times then on the Villorba course pit gantry. 5.5 minutes remaining. Montermini once more attempting to elevate himself on past Miguel Ramos. Is he going to be able to challenge the Portuguese driver on the brakes into the chicane? No, he's not. Instead, he hopes that Ramos will outbrake himself, and that's exactly what happens. Jumping across the speed bumps is Miguel Ramos, who rejoins. He's going to have to just back off his pace here, Ramos, because the stewards take a fairly dim view to the drivers who were judged to have gained an advantage. Coming out of the pit lane, by the way, was the car that was in third, Miguel Toril in the safe path Mercedes, which would suggest that it was Toril who had that tyre that exploded on the way to Ascari. So Toril has dropped out of contention, and that means that in the GTS Championship battle, Lorenzo Bontempelli is suddenly in a golden opportunity to bring himself into a joint share of the championship lead with Giorgio Pantano and Rafael Suzuki, because Bontempelli goes third in the race. We have got in the lead of the race now Paul Rosell, so it's Rosell who has moved up to the head of the field. Alessandro Pierguidi in second, and something's evidently happened off camera because we've got the debris all over the circuit, as moving through is Andrea Montermini. So Andrea Montermini taking the place away from Igaram. So what has happened? Stefano Constantini, I wonder, because he's not come through and has dropped off the leaderboard. So as we follow the battle between the two Super GT class protagonists, this, by the way, for second in the Super GT class as well, and the two championship protagonists, nervous smile for Davide Rigon. We have had drama at the very head of the field. So here is Stefano Constantini, and that's why his tyre letting go. So Stefano Constantini, yes, it is. It's a rear left puncture. And this is what we feared might happen, is that the cars on those wet tyres would overheat the rubber and they would explode like that or fail on them. So we have got a very jumbled order now. It's Paul Rosell who leads the way in the SMP Russian Bears Ferrari. Second place is Alessandro Pierguidi. Up into third, we've got Lorenzo Bontempelli. And in fourth position, it's Fabio Onidi. We've got 3 minutes remaining on what is a very rapidly drying Monza circuit as well. Montermini is towards the outer reach of the top 10. So here is the race leader, the Spanish driver Paul Rosell. Experienced GT racer Rosell, former class winner at the Barcelona 24 Hours. So class champion in the Spanish GT Championship. But this really would be his best international level result. He has got Alessandro Pierguidi doing what he can to really win. We're going to have time for 2 more laps. So we have fractionally over a lap time left on the race clock, and that is going to be a little bit alarming for Rosell. He's pushing as hard as he dares in the SMP Ferrari, but they'll have seen the problems for the other runners, and there is that debris. And as we surmise it might be the case, it is Miguel Torrell's tyre that has decided to part company with the rim. It could have very, very significant bearing on the outcome of the GTS Championship. So into the penultimate lap of the race we go, and Paul Rosell, last time around, was caught to the tune of 1.8 seconds by Alessandro Pierguidi. And if this is the penultimate lap, and we think it is, then Pierguidi could reel in Rosell on the final lap of the race. It's going to be touch and go. It's 3.8 seconds between the pair of them. And at the rate of capture from Pierguidi, that might be just enough. So there is Rosell, there is Pierguidi, and Pierguidi was 6/10 faster just through that first sector than the race leader Paul Rosell. We have got a grandstand finish here at Monza between the two GTS Ferrari 458s as into the first Lesmo. Pierguidi trying to chase down Rosell. They'll also be mindful of not overheating their tyres into the second Lesmo. The second intermediate, by the way, we'll see just how well Pierguidi is bringing down that gap, comes before they arrive into Ascari. The first sector set by Alessandro Pierguidi was the best first sector of anybody in the race. What about over second sector? And flashing through, and yes, gaining ground, and just by 0.4 of a second was Alessandro Pierguidi. Through the gravel trap goes Carlos Vieira, Rivex Porsche, and that is leaving him marooned towards the outer reaches of the field. He's down in 23rd position as a result of that drama. So we've got 30 seconds left on the clock. We are going to have time for one more lap, and already on this lap so far, Pierguidi's been a second quicker. What about the fight for third and fourth? Because that's very tight as well. Lorenzo Bontempelli being caught rapidly by Fabio Onidi, and Bontempelli possibly a little bit offline going to Parabolically. He's gathered up quite nicely, and it's going to be a very dramatic final lap here, because both the lead of the race could change, as could third and fourth. Well, 1.6 seconds faster was Alessandro Pierguidi last time. He brings Rosell's advantage down to 2.2 seconds, but it now comes as well to the old motorsport adage that it's one thing to catch the car in front, it's quite another to find your way past. Around Curva Grande, Rosell, the sole Spanish driver in the SMP Russian Bears racing team, could well give them a fantastic triumph here at Monza through the second chicane. And again, in the first sector, Pierguidi was 0.4 of a second faster than Rosell. And what Paul Rosell can't do here, forward to back off handbrake. The Russian national anthem in honour of the SMP Russian Bears Ferrari team. And on to the presentation of the trophies. So first of all, in third position for Lorenzo Bontempelli and Marco Fretzer. And they've had 2 outright race podiums in the last 4 races. And that gives Bontempelli every opportunity to win the GTS Championship once more, going in for Roman Avlanov and Paul Rosell. About to begin in earnest. We will next be